My father used to say that nothing would have been the same if my skin tone had been darker, but with talent, strength, and commitment, nothing could stand in my way, could it?
Welcome to Trembol Podcast, the place for music stories that thrill.
Hello, my name is Beyonce Giselle Knowles Carter, although everyone knows me simply as Beyonce. In my circle of family and friends, they call me Bey, although fans often use other nicknames to refer to me: Queen B, Queen Beyonce, or Sasha Fierce, the latter being a sort of alter ego I created to overcome my shyness. I'll tell you more later. I was born on September 4th, 1981 in Houston, Texas, USA. My father was Mathew Knowles, a medical equipment sales manager. My mother, Tina Knowles, started out as a banker, but decided to totally change course and become a stylist by opening her own beauty salon. It was called Headliners. She would always be my best stylist, and nowadays a social media star. If you're wondering where my name comes from, it's from my mother. Her maiden name is Beyonce. Well, it was Beyonce, actually, with a Latin I, which has French origins, but because of a mistake on her birth certificate, they spelled it with an O. She, who is a very strong woman, suggested that I use it as my stage name, and to this day, I still do. I have a younger sister, Solange, who is also immersed in the entertainment industry. She composed some songs in the early days of my group, Destiny's Child. We have always been very close, since we were running around like crazy in the park in front of our house until today. You won't believe it, but my father abandoned my mother and me when I was only 2 months old. Came back as soon as he saw that he could get something out of me. He was a good father, although I felt I needed his approval in everything I did. He didn't give it to me because he liked to pressure me. That way he made me a little bit stronger each time. I started singing when I was 4 years old, so it won't surprise you when I tell you that at the age of 8 I put together my first musical group. I did it with some girls, including Kelly Rowland and Latavia Roberson, who would later become part of the first lineup of Destiny's Child, the group that brought me success. We called our girl band Girls Time. Kelly Rowland lived with my family because she and her mother had moved to our neighborhood to escape her abusive father. Kelly's mother, who had little means, gave legal custody to my parents, so she came to live with us. There was a lot of love in my house. I remember when I was 7 years old, I entered a school talent show and performed John Lennon's Imagine. In addition to a standing ovation from the audience, I won, which encouraged me to enter other festivals such as one in Houston where I sang Home. But don't think that I was a daring girl, just the opposite. I was so shy that my parents signed me up for dance classes to see if I could loosen up. I almost won the local Performing Arts Award, which encouraged me a few years later to continue studying at the Houston High School Performing and Visual Arts. Even though I was good at music, it was at that school that I discovered that I really had a talent for it. So I pursued further training and joined the choir at St. John's United Methodist Church. I hadn't told you yet, but me and my family are very religious. I was about 14 years old when the girls and I entered a musical talent show. My father was convinced we would win, but we came in second. Of course, all the musicians were over 30 years old and had a lot of experience. But that made my father see that we had a great future and that we had to stop being a girl group and become an all-girl band. That's how Destiny's Child was born. LaToya Luckett, Kelly Rowland, Latavia Roberson, and I, Beyonce, formed the group. The choice of name was not easy. We were going to be called the Cliché or the Dolls, but thanks to the intervention of my mother, Tina Knowles, who suggested we use a biblical name, we settled on Destiny's Child. At first, we were just performing for fun. In fact, the only money we made was the $5 we charged our relatives when we sang in front of them on a small stage my father had built in the back of our house. Eventually, it started to get more serious, so much so that my father quit his job as a salesman to manage the group. So my father, Mathew Knowles, put a lot of pressure on us to get ahead. In fact, in 1992, my father founded his own record label, showing his ambition for fame. In 1995, when I was 14, we signed our first record deal with Elektra Records, but the joy was short-lived because we were fired without releasing any work. That increased the tension in my family, so much so that my parents separated for a while. We spent almost 2 years working, rehearsing, playing gigs so much that I could not go to college. Life was my teacher, but all that work paid off in 1997 when Columbia Records offered us the opportunity to release a song for the soundtrack of the movie Men in Black. The track was called Killing Time. That song would be the beginning of our road to stardom. In 1998, we debuted on the music scene with our first full-length album, Destiny's Child. We introduced it with the single No, No, No. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. In fact, the following year, in 1999, we released our second album, The Writings on the Wall, selling over 8 million records. But then, two of the members of the group, Latavia Roberson and Latoya Luckett, demanded that my father stop being our agent. Far from succeeding, my father had them disassociated from the group, and they were replaced by Michelle Williams and Farrah Franklin. It was a hard time. I suffered a depression of almost 2 years. There were days when I would lock myself in my room and not even eat. Between copyright lawsuits, distribution of profits, awards, and the relevance achieved by the group, another member, Farrah Franklin, left the band because she could no longer stand the pressure. So Destiny's Child became a trio: Kelly Rowland, Michelle Williams, and I, who would be their leader.
Sir, yes, sir.
Musically, we were going from strength to strength, especially because the album included one of the biggest hits of our career, Say My Name. In 2000, when I was 19, we were invited to sing a song for the soundtrack of Charlie's Angels, Independent Women, Part 1, which was to be a big hit. The truth is that we were working a lot. We usually played 2 shows a day, giving constant interviews and spending the time from one plane to another, but I stayed focused and encouraged the whole team to keep up with me.
Left, right, left.
I not only sang and danced, I wrote our next hit, Survivor, because I wanted to release something with more rhythm and joy. Survivor would also be the name of our third album, which reached stratospheric numbers. As the second single, we released Bootylicious, which means something like ass delicious, although it's actually a made-up word. Imagine our surprise when sometime later it was added in the Oxford Dictionary. Do you want to know the definition? Here it is. The term alludes to being sexually attractive, especially with a voluptuous bottom. That same 2001, we released a Christmas album called 8 Days of Christmas. Despite all the success, it was time to try something new, so we decided to take a break from Destiny's Child and start our solo careers. I didn't want to rush. Even though my bandmates released their albums earlier, I preferred to wait. In 2002, I participated in my first movie, Austin Powers in Goldmember. A year later, I acted in Temptation Fight. My performance in both films received good reviews. At that time, the successful rapper Jay-Z invited me to sing with him on his track, Bonnie and Clyde.
It's on my life. Nobody or nothing won't ever come between us, and I promise I'll give my life. Loving my trust if you was my boyfriend.
I had met him about 5 years earlier, around 1997, becoming friends. Our relationship will evolve on time. I'll tell you about it later. Finally, in 2003, I released Dangerously in Love, my first solo album. When I had it finished and showed it to the label, they said, "I'm sorry, but we didn't hear a single hit here." What an eye. The album had 5 number ones, topping several international music charts. All this thanks to singles like Crazy in Love, on which I collaborated again with Jay-Z. Just in case you don't know it, his real name is Sean Carter, the man of my life. Other hits from the album were Baby Boy with Sean Paul and the great tune Naughty Girl. That wasn't all. I won 5 Grammy Awards and made my first steps in the world of advertising, doing campaigns for L'Oreal or Pepsi. At the end of 2003, I became the artist with more sales in a year, 11 million records, surpassing legendary band like the Beatles or Simon and Garfunkel. You know, I am allergic to the composition of most of the perfumes on the market. To solve it over the years, I have launched several fragrances such as True Star or True Star Gold, to which composition I and many other people are not allergic. In 2004, I rejoined Destiny's Child to release an album called Destiny Fulfilled. The album went multi-platinum due to songs like Make Me Lose My Breath, Despite the success, the girls and I felt it was the end of our journey as a group. I was already becoming a star on my own, and we decided to say a final goodbye to the band. But rest assured, the girls and I remain close friends. Once in 2006, I released my long-awaited second solo album. I had to delay it because I was offered my first role as a protagonist in the great film Dreamgirls. I was totally focused on it for 6 months. Maybe that's why I got 2 Golden Globe nominations for Best Actress in a Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy and Best Original Song for a tune that still resonates today, Listen. My second album was called B-Day, Beyonce Day, and was released on September 4th, just on my 25th birthday. I couldn't have had a better gift as it debuted at number 1 on the Billboard chart. As I did on my previous album, I invited rapper Jay-Z to sing with me. Although nobody knew it yet, he was my boyfriend. We sang together Deja Vu. The following year, 2007, I released a deluxe version of B-Day, which included the smash hit Beautiful Liar with Shakira. The song invites mainly to move the hips. That was not my only collaboration with an artist. I also sang with Alejandro Fernandez in the song Gypsy Love. That year, I embarked on a 97-city world tour called the Beyonce Experience. Although it was a blast, in one of my concerts, something terrible happened. I had fireworks falling from the ceiling of the stage to make some songs more spectacular, but in one of the shows, something went wrong, and a part of the mechanism collapsed, hurting 2 of the people in the front row. Of course, I went to see them at the hospital, and luckily, it was nothing. I am deeply Catholic. I believe in giving to those in need, and whenever I can, I collaborate in charitable causes to give back to the world a little of everything it has given me. In 2008, I became the second highest paid music artist in the world. To celebrate, I released my 3rd album, I Am Sasha Fierce. Do you want to know who is Sasha Fierce? It's just an alter ego that I created for myself with a crazier personality than mine. It allows me to behave more eccentrically, making my shows more entertaining. I also called the album I Am Sasha Fierce because it was divided into 2 parts. The first one, I Am, is composed of quiet songs, while the second one, Sasha Fierce, is thought to dance like crazy. Like my previous works, the album was a worldwide bestseller. Among the songs you can find If I Were a Boy, in which I explained everything I would do if I were a boy.
If I were a boy, I think I could
It also featured the mega hit Single Ladies Put a Ring on It. This track is especially known for the legendary dance in the music video that has been imitated millions of times. I'm sure you've done it at some point too, right? What few knew is that while I was singing about rings and proposals, I was immersed in the celebration of a wedding, my own. I had managed to keep my relationship with rapper and producer Jay-Z a secret for the past 5 years. From the moment we met, we connected perfectly. As we were both artists, we understood each other's lifestyle, but beyond that, we connected on a spiritual level. We started dating when I was 20 years old, and he taught me how to be a woman, a friend, an artist. He taught me how to live, and I give thanks every day for having him. That's why on April 4, 2008, I married the love of my life, Jay-Z. This union meant that we became the couple with the largest fortune in Hollywood, more than $3 billion. During this time, I returned to the big screen starring in the movie Cadillac Records, which tells the story of Etta James. That year, I was also in charge of entertaining Barack and Michelle Obama's first dance at their entrance into the White House, performing Etta's song, At Last. There were 2 more songs from my album, I Am Sasha Fierce, that became #1 worldwide. The first one, Sweet Dream, which is perhaps my fans' favorite tune.
Turn the lights on.
And the second one, in which is the biggest songs of my career, Halo. I went on tour all over the world with the I Am Tour. 1 year, 108 concerts, and 120 million profits. That's the summary. I'm a rather quiet and calm person, but when I get on stage, a fierceness comes over me. I want to put on the biggest show possible. I'm also ambitious. I want to be the first African-American woman to win an Oscar, a Grammy, and a Tony. So I'm on it. In 2009, I participated in the thriller Obsessed. I also re-released my latest work with new singles Broken Hearted Girl and Videophone in collaboration with Lady Gaga, with whom I collaborated again later with the song Telephone. At the Grammys that year, I took home 6 of the 10 gramophones I was nominated for, the first female artist to win that many awards in a single night. In 2010, something shook our family. My father had been having an affair with actress Alexandra Wright, and they had had a son named Nixon. When my mother found out, she filed for divorce. The worst part was that it wasn't the first time. He had already had another daughter named Coy with a dancer. A few years later, my mother got her life back on track by remarrying the actor Richard Lawson, who already had a daughter, Bianca. In a really short time, we had increased the family with lots of siblings. At that time, I wrote a song called Heartbeat. It's probably the saddest song I've ever written. Nobody knew it, but I was a few weeks pregnant. Unfortunately, on a visit to the gynecologist, he detected that my daughter's heart wasn't beating, and I suffered a miscarriage. Feeling extreme pain, I went back to the studio and wrote that song.
I'm so unlucky, I can't breathe.
I moved on, and in 2011, I released Run the World, Girls, an anthem to encourage women to take control of the world. I composed that song as a call to all women to be the best version of themselves and try to reach the top. That's my philosophy of life. By the way, if you like my music, even though you might not know it, you are part of the Bay Hive. That's the way my fans call themselves, the Beyonce Hive, because I am Queen Bee. One of my B's favorite songs is Best Thing I Never Had. If you want to know the story behind this track, you'll find it on my friend's site, trembol.com. I had my new album ready, but before its release it was leaked. I called it 4, not only because it was my 4th solo album, but because that number is very important in my life. It's the day I was born, the day I got married, and both Jay-Z and I had it tattooed. One of the most important cuts was Love on Top. In it, I go up in pitch on every chorus until I hit sky-high notes. In 2011, media started rumoring about another possible pregnancy. Guess what? They were right. The label, the producers, the studio, everyone was super nervous, but I'm a calm and confident person, so I told them to stay aside because I was going to take care of everything. At the end of my performance at the MTV Video Music Awards, I touched my belly and told the world about my pregnancy. It was a very emotional and viral moment. More than 8,000 tweets per second were sent, being the Guinness record for the moment with the most tweets per second. 2011 will always be marked in my memory because that year I fired my father as my manager. He had been stealing money from me and I had to do it, but it was a purely business decision. He is my father for life, and I love him. I am grateful for everything he has taught me. He and my mother have been entrepreneurs, and I will follow in their footsteps. I have to admit that it was one of the most difficult times in my life. My father didn't take it well, and that hurt me a lot. But as I say, I needed to be independent, to decide my future on my own. I will confess that my current relationship with my father is not very close. In 2012, my beautiful daughter Blue Ivy was born, a blessing after the miscarriage I had suffered. She filled my life with happiness and much more work. Just a year later, 2013, I released a surprise album under my name, Beyonce. At the same time, a documentary directed by me for HBO titled Beyonce, Life is Nothing But a Dream was aired. I show parts of my personal life and my career in music. During those months, I again lent my voice to a movie, this time in the animated film Epic. As far as the album was concerned, I showed myself to be more mature, dealing with issues such as eating disorders, marriage problems, and motherhood. The album was once again a success, making me the first woman in history to have 5 albums at #1 on the Billboard chart. Although it was not without controversy, this time with an unexpected actor, NASA. I tell you what happened. In the beginning of my song XO, I used an audio from the day of the Challenger spacecraft explosion. That made them very angry.
Controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction.
I didn't want to offend anyone, so I apologized, but I didn't remove it from the song. One of my big moments without a doubt was my appearance at halftime of the 2013 Super Bowl. It was seen by millions of people around the world, although I also received a lot of criticism from animal associations for my costume that had iguana skin and other animals. I had done so well the first time that I went back to sing at halftime of the Super Bowl in 2016, this time alongside Bruno Mars and Coldplay, with whom I had collaborated on their track, Hymn for the Weekend. In 2016, I had already prepared what would be my most critically acclaimed album, Lemonade. I accompanied it with a film. The record addressed the issue of my husband's infidelity and introduced a much more African-American aesthetic to support anti-racist movements like Black Lives Matters. In fact, I had already done this in the Super Bowl show where I and my dancers wore costumes simulating those of the Black Panther political party, which, as you know, fought for the survival of members of the Black community. With Lemonade, I broke records again, adding one more album debuting at #1 on the charts. Even further, all 12 songs of this work were on the charts at the same time. Can you believe it? I became the artist with the most MTV Video Music Awards in history. On a personal note, life was smiling on me again. Just when I was invited to do the main show at the Coachella Festival, I became pregnant with twins without looking for it. Truth is that it was very complicated. That festival was enormously important to me. We were rehearsing for over 4 months, and I put together something that had never been done before. A full orchestra of Black musicians, African American dancers, and vocalists, up to 200 people on stage to represent all the beauty and artistry of my people. But in the meantime, I was getting fat. My blood pressure was rising. I had toxemia, preeclampsia, and in utero, the heartbeat of one of my babies stopped several times. Imagine what it was like that the day I gave birth, I weighed 99 kilos, and in fact, I had to have an emergency cesarean section. Luckily, my twins, Rumi and Sir, were born on June 13, 2017. I was only a few months away from the Coachella show, and I didn't feel like myself. My body wasn't the same, and my head was on my kids. I rehearsed, exercised, and ran to breastfeed them, in addition to taking care of my other daughter, who was 6 years old. I pushed myself to a limit that I thought I would not overcome. I made it, but I vowed not to put myself in that situation again. By the day of the concert, I had lost so much weight that I could fit into my pre-pregnancy outfits, but only I know how hungry I was. Unfortunately, the performance was canceled that year, but I was able to see all the effort rewarded the following year, 2018, finally being able to perform at an event followed by over 100,000 people, where I had my friends from Destiny's Child and my sister Solange Knowles performing. It was a great success, and I recorded a documentary for Netflix called Homecoming, where I reflected the whole process and where you can see the entire concert. That year, at the Grammy Awards, I won 2.5 gramophones. Do you want to know why half? Well, the award for Best Album of the Year went to Adele, but she was such a fan of mine that she decided to split her trophy in 2 and share it with me. What a great moment. Due to the success of our previous tour, Jay-Z and I embarked on the second part of the On the Run tour, further reaffirming the power of our union with a joint album called Everything Is Love, which we released under the name The Carters, which is my husband's last name. Starting in 2019, I embarked on a series of projects with Netflix and Disney. On the one hand, I voiced Simba's lioness friend, Nala, in The Lion King. I also recorded the film's theme songs, Can You Feel the Love Tonight and Spirit. Later, I created The Lion King, The Gift for Disney+, an album I directed and produced in which I paid tribute to African culture. It was introduced with a track called Brown Skin Girl. In the video, I brought together Kelly Rowland, my mother, Naomi Campbell, my daughter, all as a plea for the beauty of brown and black skin.
Didn't ask her for that pretty dark skin. Pretty like Lupita when the camera's closing. Melanin too dark to call her shade.
Following in the wake of that work, I released for Disney Plus Black is King, a visual album inspired by The Lion King that had both praise and criticism from the Black community. Back in 2020, I collaborated with Megal Thee Stallion on his track Savage, and then released the single Black Parade. It wasn't all music though. Together with sports brand Adidas, I released Ivy Park, a collection with which I want to pay homage to African American cowboys and cowgirls.
Ride 'em, cowboy!
I've spent a lot of time focusing on building my legacy and representing my culture the best way I've known how, but in the last few years, I've decided to give myself permission to dedicate more time to my own happiness. But don't think I stopped. I took home the Grammy for Best R&B performance, making me the female artist in history with the most gramophones, 28.
Yahoo!
Shortly after, I released Be Alive for the soundtrack, the Williams sisters film. I'm still making music and will continue to do so, but never leaving aside the most important thing in my life, my family. Forbes magazine has named me several times one of the most influential people, and People magazine the most beautiful woman. I have sold more than 75 million records worldwide. But what matters most to me is that my children are proud, that my parents are proud, that my brothers and sisters around the world are proud. That is the reason for my existence, to help people with my music, to awaken a vision in everyone that encourages to dream big, showing that there are no limits, because if I could do it, you can do it too.
We hope you enjoyed the video and support us by subscribing to our channel or giving us a super thanks. With your support, we will carry on bringing you the best music stories.
Thank you very much, Trembles. We love you.